In this episode I've been continuing to work on my preserved rail yard and been working on some old Hornby Teak coaching that I want to improve. From this which is very anemic to this which hopefully looks a lot better. I certainly think it does. I've been continuing to work on my preserved rail yard, enhancing some of the detailing and just adding more realism here and there. In my last update I did get a comment about having some hard standing around the loco shed. I was thinking about it but hadn't sort of got around to doing it, so I thought I'd add some sort of representation at the moment around it. I'm not sure whether I fully like it, but there is something down to allow people to walk up and down and sort of work on the coaches and the locos at the moment, but I'm not sure whether I want to do something else to it. But there's some basic concrete hard standing. Also I'm starting to look around for some more detailing, odds and ends that I can sort of mess up the yard with, you know, discarded bits and pieces, including things like these barrels amongst the grass and other things what will be sort of discarded. I haven't yet sort of stuck them in place, and as I can see on the camera, that this barrel doesn't look very good as it's got a seam on the end, but turning it and putting it in the grass a bit more like that probably hide things like that. But yeah, I need to come across some more detailing. I think possibly the next toy fair I'm going to, I'll be looking through the odds and ends in the different boxes that people have. It's always a good place to find even stuff that's broken that, you know, you can use on the layout, and you usually find it underneath their tables in a junk box, and some of it comes in quite handy for adding detail. I'll probably put some like discarded loco axles and stuff and wheels here and there, anything to represent sort of the maintenance of locos and coaches and bits and pieces. But I'm continuing to add bits and pieces, build up the scenery. I've got some bushes I've made and shrubs and stuff I'm going to add, and fencing, you name it. There's plenty to add, and every time you add something it just looks that bit more realistic. So always plenty of work to do. As well as working on my heritage line and yard, I've also been thinking about the coaching stock, as the coaches I've got are a bit old. They're sort of old Hornbys, even though they were put together pretty well, even in sort of the 1970s, 80s. But some of the colouring is not very good, and I wanted some LNER teak coaches on the sort of heritage line. And rather than buying new, I looked at how I could change sort of the look of the teak coaches, because they don't look very realistic. So I looked around on YouTube, and some chap was using some sort of like a sepia sort of coating, which must be water based, because you can go straight over the transfers and it doesn't affect the transfers at all, and it does enhance it and make the carriage look like it's teak instead of some anemic plastic like they used to look like. So this is the before, and if I move this along, you'll see what it looks like coated with this sepia. It's called Seraphine Sepia by Citadel Paints, and he advised giving 2 coats of this, but I think 3 was even better. It does dull down some of the transfers and stuff, but not to the point that you can't see them, and it doesn't destroy them. So these coaches also come apart quite nicely. As I say, they're reasonably well built, and they unclip quite nicely, so you don't have no problems with coating any of the windows or anything, because it all comes apart. It's quite a subtle change, but that's the good thing about it. You're not overdoing the change in the coach, and because it's quite runny and liquid, as you brush it on you don't see any brush strokes. It settles and goes in the door gaps and frames of the windows and looks a deeper colour between the gaps, which adds to the overall authentic look of it. Really, it certainly looks more like teak than the original plastic moulding does. A good enhancement, I think. Obviously I'll be giving them a little bit of a weathering as well, as the bogies and underframe look too plasticky as well, and maybe a touch of dirt on the roof, because even though these are old they look a little bit grimy, but they would have had soot coming off the locos. It would have been very hard to keep them clean, so I think a little bit of a sooty dusting on top won't go amiss. But yeah, that's another thing I've been doing just lately. I think they're looking good put alongside an A4 with the enhanced colouring. I think they look much better. The numbering does need altering, which I will do in the future, but I don't see it as being as that important at the moment. But it shouldn't be too much of an issue to remove a couple of numbers and replace them, and just reapply a little drop of this over the top. So a future project, but at the moment doing this has enhanced the looks quite well, I reckon. Certainly pays to look at YouTube and find what other people are doing and what other ideas they're coming up with. It's a very good place to source information these days. One of my favourite preserved railway lines is Severn Valley Railway, and they've got some nice rakes of teak coaches, and I've always looked at them and thought I would like these models to look similar, you know, with a darker finish, more like the realistic thing. So that's also urged me to do something about it. Now I'm looking at this heritage sort of yard I'm working on, so that spurred me on to enhance them. They are a good model for their age, being that they were produced sort of late 70s and through the 1980s. They overall are a pretty good model. I mean, even the gap with the tension lock couplings, which are not very good and a bit big and clumsy, but the gap between the coaches is a lot closer than some of the Hornby these days. So I think they're worth a look at second hand at toy fairs and such. I probably purchased these on average about £6 a coach in those days. As I've been going through my stock of teak coaches, I've been noticing the differences that Hornby's been applying to them over the years, and they're definitely not all born equal. Different wheels, and also that I didn't notice until I started going through them, which is a big change, is that some have actually got the proper teak ends and some are just black plastic. Now you are able to swap that round, so I will be making a full setup with the teak ends, including having a third brake, but the black ends don't look as good, and also you'd have a job trying to match them in. From looking around on the internet, there seems to be a whole science into teak coach stock, and I know very little about it, but from what I've been looking at, it looks like the correct bogies for these are these Grizzly bogies on this one, but I don't know if Hornby put these originally on some of their stock or whether they've been transferred over, because I bought these from toy fairs, but it would seem these are the correct bogies, so I'll be concentrating on keeping the stock with the correct items, but I might keep an eye out for more spare bogies around toy fairs and that, so I can change them over if they are wrong. But boy, is there a lot of information on teak coaches out there. I didn't really want to get into that, I just want to sort of have them as correct as I can on the layout, but as I'm mainly into 1980s at the moment, I don't really want to go into too much of a sort of depth into looking into this, but I'm sure there's people out there who will tell me what's what, which if you want to in the comments, I'll be more than grateful. I know very little about this sort of stock, as it was long before I was born really, and most of it was scrapped when I was born, but I still visit heritage lines, like I say, like the Severn Valley Railway, which I've got a fondness for Bridge North and other stations on the line, and you often see these teak coaches being pulled up and down, so I did fancy them in my rail yard. Just to show I don't always get everything right, and I rushed this a bit because I want to get on and do something else tonight, and made a bit of a cock up of the grass and the turf. Some of the cock up may turn out to be a bit interesting, so I'm going to leave some of it, but I rushed it, made a big mess of it, so that, and I haven't laid any static grass and turf for a while, made me sort of forget the processes, you might say, but still this stuff that I've vacuumed off because I cocked up, you don't throw it away, because it's useful. So I've got a tub here with all the stuff I vacuumed off which didn't work out, but you can make bushes and, you know, add it to other undergrowth later on, just to sort of add 3 dimensions to the baseball. So whatever you do, if you make a mistake, don't throw it away. It's still usable in other ways. So just a confession. Hopefully I can make good on what I've made a mess of, and it will look good in the finished video. As well as having a problem with the grass I've just laid and making a big mistake with it, I've also started to doubt whether my static grass applicator that I made myself is doing a good job, because in a previous video you might have seen that I changed it to having an electrode behind the mesh, as people were recommending that being a better place to have it and also safer. But I started to think I'm not getting the same sort of charge from it, and it's not doing such a good job. So I've now soldered a wire to the electrode and put it back on the mesh as well. So as well as the electrode behind the grass, I've now got the mesh that's electrified again. Obviously you have to be a bit careful and discharge it when you finish with it, but it started to make a real difference again. It's back to how it was before I changed it, and possibly even better, because you've got a static, you know, a static build up behind it, and as it goes through the mesh as well. So the results seem to be a lot better. So you live and learn, but this is working better for me at the moment. I'm continuing to add sort of layers of foliage and stuff to improve the look, and I've added a few more tufts of grass here and there, added grass over the back behind the main lines that border the woodland, and other places just to blend things in. So there's grass between the tracks, looks a little bit more disused. Also, the area that I really made a bit of a mistake on, I'm now going through a recovery stage, and I thought it would be nice to add some shrubbery and brambles at the back of the line, just as the line that goes down for the lower level disappears behind it. So I'm working on some bushes and bramble really, and I've relayed some grass in tufts, and it's now starting to look a bit more random and disused, like I intend it to look, because there's a disused bit of scrubland really that goes round this corner and into the preservation scene. What I'm using to do this is polyfibre from Woodland Scenics, but I imagine you can get any sort of polyfibre and colour it yourself if you want. It's just I don't require that much, so it goes a long way. I use a spray varnish then to spray all over it once I've teased it out and spread it over the area I want it, and then I start adding things like various scatters on top and offcuts of sea foam, just tucking them in here and there. It's just a question of building up the layers really, and that's pretty much it really. That's the optimum word really, layers. The more layers you add, the more it comes to life. That's with detailing generally, And also definitely with scenery, the more layers you add to your scenery, the more it just pops out at you. So you just keep adding really, and even when you're finished you can always revisit and add more. So just my advice is build up the layers. The more layers the better really. Right, I'm a bit further forward now. Still plenty more things to do. Just having a clear up now. Make sure I clean the track properly, and then coat the track in the track cleaner I use. Put things back together for now, and not to mention I've got cleaning the track, because the track, that is by vacuuming it, the track goes around the back and a lot of the static grass is falling down the back. So I use my trusty train vacuum cleaner to go down the back and have a vacuum. And it sounds like it's picking up quite a bit of stuff actually. It's behind this scenic board at the moment, and as I laid some static grass in front of it, some of it's falling down the crack to the track below. So any way to clean it up, as I can't see it without pulling all the scenery apart again. It's also time for a cuppa, while the loco does the cleaning up for a change instead of me. I'm undecided what to do with the backing scenery in this area at the moment, and because all my materials and glues and everything for working on the layout is behind it, I just put this bit of backing scene, a bit random really, just to hide all the liquids and glues and stuff I've got just for now. Pretty much a temporary thing, but just to give a bit of depth to what I'm working on. Sort of define what I want and help me decide on the foreground. The brambles I did along here are drying nicely and starting to look quite good. I've got to do something with the track that goes to the lower level of the back. It's not ballasted or any sort of detailing or anything at the moment, but I've also got to sort the track out, as it needs redressing really. Another stage further, from just about, well, just above track level, looking down the layout, there's something to look at now. So as the train goes down this end past the coach shed and disappears to the lower level or goes around the upper level, there's at least some scenery coming on now. I've still got to do this tunnel entrance, which I can't do until I work out the embankment on the left. But that's a bit of a good shed for the preserved rail yard. There isn't a station. I'm just gonna imagine the station is where I'm sitting, where my
my workbenches, but at this end there's just a sort of a mock-up goods yard for all the parts and stuff they're using for the preserve line, plus an old vehicle out there just to add a bit of interest for the tourists, which I'm going to start sort of putting some cars in this car park and adding some detail to it in the future. So this is really what I mean by where I'm going to have to imagine the station is here, and that's how you board the trains. But there is no station because it's my desk with my coffee on it.
I've really enjoyed messing up the preserve rail yard, and it's sort of a bit of an art form really, rusting things up and placing things in a position which hopefully looks a bit like it's been just discarded in a sort of a real manner, as I've been working on all this junk over here. I'm not sure about the wheels being the right colour. They may be a bit too fresh, rust wise. Maybe they need darkening, but I've enjoyed making a sort of a scrapyard really. I can see why people like doing this sort of thing, but I don't really want to add too much so it's over the top, but I have enjoyed making up sort of bits and pieces of junk. So I will continue to add a bit more detail, because with every bit of detail things in my mind become a little bit more real. With every bit of junk and every little bush and tree and fencing, bits and pieces, the more you add, the more it seems to pop out and hit you and make you question whether it's real or not. Another message on the phone. No peace for the wicked.